Okay.
Okay. Om Yo Brahmanam Vedadhati Purvam Yo Vai Vedamscha Prahinoti Tasmai Tam Hadevam Atmabuddhi Prakasham Mumukshurvai Sharanamaham Prapadye Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya Om Shanti 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 Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Gurave Sarvalokanam Bhishaje Bhavaroginam Nidhaye Sarvavidyanam Sri Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. So we finished on 320 last class. We'll now start with 321. Like I always ask, are there any questions requiring any discussion, or can we straight away move to the slokas? No? Nobody? Okay. Are you able to see my screen? I've shared my screen.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So 321, please repeat after me. Pramado Brahmanishthayam
Pramado Brahmanishthayam
Nishtayam
na kartavyah kadachana.
न
na
कर्तव्यः
kartavya
कदाचन
kadachana
Pramado mrityuhu
प्रमादो मृत्युः
mrityuh
ityah
rityaah
इत्याह
Bhagavan
bhagavan
भगवान्
Brahmanah Sutah.
ब्रह्मणः सुतः
Pramado Brahmanishthayam na kartavyah kadachana Pramado mrityurityah Bhagavan Brahmana Sutah. So this is a change of topic now. So until now, the focus was on ahankara, the nature of ahankara, what are the problems of identifying with ahankara, and how to manage. All that was the topic. Now the topic is slightly shifting. Acharya now wants to talk about, very specifically about, what he calls negligence or carelessness. So the word pramadaha means in Sanskrit negligence, carelessness, and in some context even forgetfulness. So these are all the equivalent of the Sanskrit word pramadaha. In Tamil, pramadaha has a very different meaning. When we want to appreciate something, we say it's pramadam, but that's not the meaning in Sanskrit. And again, I think in Telugu, the same word pramadam it is used to say it is something is horrible. I don't know how the same word can have so many different meanings in different languages, but that's what it is. So in Sanskrit, the word pramadaha means forgetfulness, negligence, carelessness, all that. Okay, so the next 5-6 slokas will be focusing on the trouble with being careless, how to avoid being careless, what are the consequences if you give place to carelessness. All that will be talked about. Okay, so pramadaha brahmanisthayam. Brahmanishtha here means the final goal of nididhyasanam. That is brahmanishtha. You should remember that this entire section of slokas that we are seeing, it is all concerned with nididhyasanam. And what is nididhyasanam? Nididhyasanam is not sitting in meditation for say 10-15 minutes in every day and then chanting some shlokas or chanting some Upanishadic mantras. Of course, there is one meditative form of nididhyasanam that is recommended for certain situations. But really speaking, the true meaning of nididhyasanam is mindful living. Mindful as in being mindful of the Upanishadic teachings and always, keeping in mind that our true nature is not this body mind complex, but our true nature is Brahma Swarupam. That is the goal of Nididhyasanam. And this Brahma Nishtha is actually the culmination of a successful Nididhyasanam. Okay, but here when Acharya says Brahmanisthayam Pramadaha, it actually means while you are achieving or trying to achieve Brahmanishtha, during that process of Nididhyasanam, when you are not yet a Brahmanishtha, you have to avoid carelessness. That is the meaning. Okay, na kartavyaha kadachana. Na kartavyaha kadachana means it should never even be tried or never even be allowed. Na kartavyaha. See, nobody practices carelessness deliberately or consciously. Carelessness means you have lost your deliberate will and you have done something as a force of habit. So when Acharya says na kartavyaha kadachana, it actually means you have to be very proactive in avoiding carelessness. That is the true meaning of na kartavyaha kadachana. So one has to be very cautious, very mindful, and always be alert. My guru says alert living. That's one of the words my Guruji uses. Alert living means you pay attention to your emotions and make sure that you never let your emotions go off the handle, and always maintain that mental balance and emotional balance and poise. That is Brahmanishtha practice. Okay. Why is Acharya saying Pramadaha Mrityurityaha? Mrityu is death. And here the death is not the physical death of the body, but spiritual destruction. That is the Mrityu. So if one becomes careless, then it can eventually lead to the whole project failing. The whole Nididhyasanam project might fail, and that will lead to a sort of a spiritual destruction, which will be very difficult to recover from. So that is the caution. It's a little like, when you drive on the mountainous roads, sometimes when you go on some kind of a mountainous trip, you can for instance, if you go to Badrinath or someplace in the Himalayas, sometimes the roads are very narrow and very steep, and on one side you have the steep hill, on the other side you have the steep valley, and if the driver is not careful, sometimes the bus or the vehicle can fall into the valley and lead to a big accident. Yeah, so Nididhyasanam is also like that. It's a little similar to driving on those mountainous roads. One has to be very watchful of where we are going and not overspeed and not go too much into the border, on the sides. Try to stay in the middle of the road and all that. So that kind of a caution is what is expected during Nididhyasanam also. Yeah. Pramadaha Mrityurityaha Bhagavan Brahmana Sutaha. So this Bhagavan Brahmana Sutaha is a reference to a rishi called Sanat Sujata. So Sanat Sujata is supposed to be one of the Sanakadi Munis. They are, Sanakadi Munis are the direct sons of Brahma. So Sanaka, Sanatana, Sanandana, there are some 4 rishis, and one of them is Sanat Sujata. And he has actually written a book, Vedantic book called Sanat Sujatiyam. And apparently Adi Shankara has also written a commentary on the Sanat Sujatiyam. So the Bhagavan Brahmana Sutaha is a reference to the teachings given in the Sanat Sujatiyam. Okay, so this is just for information. I have not read that Sanat Sujatiyam. I don't even know what that content is, but I imagine it is something very similar to other Upanishadic teachings like Bhagavad Gita or Viveki Chodamani. So he is also given some elaborate discourses. So let us take that it is another Vedantic text. That's all. Yeah. So that is the introduction to the carelessness called Pramadaha. Okay. Can we move on to 322?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Na pramadat
न
न
प्रमादात्
anarthonyo
अनर्थोऽन्यो
ज्ञानिनः स्वस्वरूपतः
ज्ञानिनः स्वस्वरूपतः
ततो मोहः
ततो मोहः
ततो अहन्धीः
ततो अहन्धीः
ततो बन्धः
ततो बन्धः
ततो व्यथा.
ततो व्यथा.
Okay. न प्रमादात् अनर्थोऽन्यो ज्ञानिनः स्वस्वरूपतः ततो मोहस्ततोऽहन्धीस्ततो बन्धस्ततो व्यथा. Okay, so the message of this shloka is very, very close to the shlokas that we find in the Bhagavad Gita, second chapter. There are 4, 5 shlokas which begin with Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaha Sangasteshu Upajayate. I'll tell you the reference. It's 61 or somewhere, second chapter. 62. Okay, so Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaha Sangasteshu Upajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kamaha Kamat Krodho Bhijayate Krodhat Bhavati Sammohaha Sammohat Smriti Vibhramaha Smriti Bhramshat Buddhinasho Buddhinashat Pranashyati. 2 shlokas, not 4 or 5. 2 shlokas, 62 and 63 in chapter 2 Bhagavad Gita. Pretty much the same idea this shloka says. It talks about the chain of consequences that follow once there is an instant of carelessness. Okay, and in the next shloka or the shloka after that, the Acharya will also give the example of a ball slipping from your hand and what happens to the ball. So that will come later. But today in this shloka we don't go there. So na pramadat anarthaha anyah swaswarupatah jnaninah. Okay, so that swaswarupatah pramadat is to be connected. Swaswarupatah means from one's true nature. Pramadat, carelessness. So there is nothing more dangerous to a jnani than being careless and losing the sense of one's true nature. That is the meaning of the first line. Anarthaha means actually danger. Anarthaha has different meanings in different contexts. In one context, it could be translated as a wasteful activity. In some other context, it can be, translated as a loss. But here it is treated as a danger or obstacle. So there is no greater danger or no greater obstacle to a jnani than suffering from carelessness from the nididhyasanam path. Swaswarupatah, true nature. So nididhyasanam is about being mindful of our true nature, which is nothing other than Brahman nature. So by slipping from that Brahman nature thought, we are giving way to carelessness and negligence, and that leads to a series of consequences. So what are the consequences? Tato mohaha. So once you are careless for a moment, the first consequence is your mind is clouded by some kind of a confusion or delusion, because you have lost your sight from that Brahman nature focus. So you start confusing yourself to be the body mind complex. That is the first step. tato ahandhihi. And when this confusion becomes a little stronger, you start identifying with the body-mind complex. So either you give in to your desires, or you give in to your emotions, or you start behaving in a non-brahmanishtha way. Let's put it that way. You start behaving like an ajnani. So even though the jnani, the acharya uses the word jnaninaha here because he wants to say that this person has actually gone through Shravanam and Mananam. So he knows that he is not the body mind complex. But in a fit of momentary, anger or disappointment or whatever, he slips from that focus and starts behaving like an ajnani. So that ahandhi is the point where the ahankara takes over. Okay, and tato bandhaha. Then it goes to next stage is bondage. So what is bondage? Bondage means you are now in the grip of your strong emotions. So you have allowed the emotions to take over, and your intellect is now taking a back seat. So your emotion has overwhelmed your intellectual faculty, and so even though you are aware of all the Vedantic teachings, you have kind of thrown them out of the window and you have taken the plunge with your emotions. That is the bandha. Tato vyatha. Vyatha means pain. Pain is suffering. So all the consequences of samsara, you experience strong negative emotions like disappointment or anger or worry or jealousy, all those things. All of that is vyatha. That is pain, emotional pain. That is not necessarily physical pain, but definitely a lot of emotional pain. And what we might call, leading to stressful situations. So that is the consequence of being negligent in a high level quick overview. The following slokas will go into more details, but this is just the introduction. What all things can happen to you. Exactly like in the Bhagavad Gita parallel that I gave, dhyayato vishayan pumsaha. There, the Krishna, what Krishna says is, the jnani, he gets tempted by something which is anatma, gets attracted to the anatma, and develops a small, shall we say, affinity to that anatma, and that small affinity becomes a slightly strong desire, and then becomes a very, very strong desire, and then it becomes an obsession, and that obsession can give rise to two possible outcomes. If your obsession is then successful, then it becomes greed. But if the obsession is obstructed, then it becomes anger. So in the Bhagavad Gita, the anger root is explained. Sangat sanjayate kamaha, kamat krodho vijayate. That krodha coming from kama is basically the kama was not fulfilled. Then it becomes krodha, which is anger. Then krodhat bhavati sammoha. There the moha or the delusion is a much stronger delusion. The delusion here in this shloka is a small delusion. There it's a much stronger emotional grip. Sammohat prativibhramaha. Pritibhramshat buddhinashaha. So it is eventually there in Bhagavad Gita, the person completely forgets the teaching and becomes practically an ajnani all over again. That is the Bhagavad Gita. But here the Acharya is talking about suffering from pain. He finishes with vyatha. Okay, that is 322. Was that clear or was that too fast?
Clear.
Yeah.
It was clear, sir.
Can we move on to 323?
Yes.
Yeah. Any questions? No?
No.
Okay. Right. Vishayabhimukham drishtva
Vishayabhimukam drishtva
vidvamsamapi vismritihi.
vidvamsamapi vismritihi
Vikshepayati
vikshepayati
dhidosaihi
dhidosaihi
Yosha jaramiva priyam.
Yosha jaramiva priyam.
Vishayabhimukham drishtva vidvamsamapi vismritihi vikshepayeti dhi doshair yosha jaramiva priyam. So, Vishaya abhimukham. So, Vishaya refers to the anatma or the worldly objects. All the objects of desire and objects of fear, all of them, they are called Vishaya. Abhimukham means the direct experience. You know, when you stand face to face with the world, that is when you experience the world. And that is here called Vishaya Abhimukham. You are coming face to face with the world, which is nothing but Anatma. Drishtva, by experiencing the world in front of you, Vidvamsamapi Vispritihi. Vispritihi is the same as Pramadaha. You know, Vispriti really means forgetfulness. Vispriti is forgetfulness, and basically the word Pramada, carelessness, negligence is all about forgetting your teaching. So Vispritihi and Pramadaha are synonymous. Okay, Vidvamsamapi means even somebody who has gone through a lot of Sravanam and Mananam and who may be considered a Vidwan. Even for such a Vidwan, when that Vidwan comes face to face with the world, it is very much possible that he may be triggered into a bout of forgetfulness, which can lead to carelessness, negligence, and all that. So that is the first line. And what happens? This Vispriti vikshepayati dhi doshaihi. Vikshepayati means to make the mind, in Sanskrit itself, there is a word called chalanam. Chalanam means to be flustered or to be disturbed. Vikshepayati also means to be extroverted. Extroverted means you are now jumping from one object of desire to another. You are completely extroverted. You are not focused in your internal teaching. So that is also vikshepanam. So vikshepayati means basically your mental equilibrium is disturbed. That is the meaning. Dhi doshaihi. Dhi doshaha is all the negative qualities, all the negative emotions and negative feelings that can remain, maybe some small remnant, like what we said, ahankara. What was the word we used in some earlier shloka? We saw vasana. So that ahankara vasana is here called dhi dosha. So the ahankara vasana gets triggered again, and then that ahankara vasana makes the person go after the sense pleasures or the other negative reactions that the world will trigger. And an example is given. Yosha jaramiva priyam. So the word jaram, jara, the word jaraha means an immoral, a man of immoral character. A man of immoral character, you can say somebody like a womanizer, that's actually the context. The word Yosha means a woman. Word Yosha means woman. Jara, you can say, is a man of loose character or womanizer. Exactly like how a womanizer would feel distracted and tempted whenever he meets a woman, any woman, not somebody like his wife or anybody, but any, the womanizer basically means he is just going around one after the other. So exactly like how a womanizer would feel tempted whenever he comes across a woman, the vismriti or the forgetfulness will make you disturbed and distracted, even though you might consider yourself to be a very wise person, that vidwan. So you might think I'm a vidwan, but the world can take your all your focus away in 1 second. There is actually a very interesting story also, which is found in some Purana. I'm not sure if it's really part of a Purana or if it is somebody's imagination, but it goes like this. Apparently Narada went to Narayana, and he wanted to know about the power of Maya. He wanted to know, hey Narayana, everybody says that Maya is very powerful, that it can even delude you. Narayana, you also can get under the spell of Maya. I don't understand how that is possible. Can you explain to me how Maya works? Okay. Then Narayana says, yeah, that's fine. I'll tell you. But before that, let us go to the earth and I'll show you some place. And then they go to earth, and then suddenly, Narada feels thirsty. Narada wants to drink some water. And then they go around, they go around looking for some water, and they have a well somewhere. And so Narada wants to drink some water from the well, but he doesn't have any equipment to take the water from the well. Then at that time, a young girl comes to draw water from the well. And then Narada requests that girl to give him some water. The girl helps, draw the water from the well, and he gives Narada water. And in that moment, Narada actually starts liking the girl. And then he starts talking to her, and then he falls in love with her. And then the girl takes him to his home in the village nearby. And there Narada decides to marry that girl. And then the marriage, Narada gets married to that girl. And then they live as a family, and they have some children and all that. Some years pass, and in all this process, Narada has completely forgotten that he came along with Narayana to get some clarification. Okay. And then suddenly some war breaks out, and in the war, a lot of army troops which invade the place, they end up killing a lot of people. So Narada's wife gets killed in that war. And then Narada starts crying. He has lost his wife. He was so much in love with this girl, and now this girl is dead. And so Narada is crying, and he's been crying for a few hours. And then Narayana comes and taps on his shoulder, asking Narada, what happened? Then Narada realizes that all this was just some kind of an illusion. And then Narada says, yes, now I understand how Maya works. Okay, so this is a story. I mean, I don't have any proof to say that this is coming from this or that Puranam, but this is a story I've heard, and it's actually a good example to convey the message that even somebody like Narada can get triggered by a momentary, fluster, and then it can drag him into a complete trip, so to say. Yeah, so that is the power of Maya, and that is what Vismriti is all about. Vismriti is nothing but Maya playing a game on the Jnani. You can take it that way. And of course, we have the story of Jadabharata in Bhagavatam, again similar story, but there it is not a girl or woman, but it is a deer calf. So the context is different, but then the again slippage from the Nididhyasanam is there. So we have a lot of some similar stories. Okay. So I think that was to 323. I think the message was conveyed. Any questions, comments? I think a hand went up. Yeah.
It was nice, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Guru Dutt, please.
Actually, this story, what you mentioned, Vasudevanji, if anyone has watched the series called Upanishad Ganga, in the episode called Maya, this episode is shown very beautifully.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I have not seen that episode, but I have heard the story being told by somebody. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it perfectly relates to this shloka here.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, sorry. I mean, I heard the same story from Rangaji, sir.
Oh, okay. Ranganji. Huh? Okay.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Can we move on? 324. Okay.
Yes.
Yathapakrishnam Shaivalam
Yathapakrishnam Shaivalam
Ksanamatram na tishtati
Ksanamatram na tishati
Avrunoti tatha maya
Avrunoti tatha maya
Pragyam vapi parangmukham.
Pragyam vapi parammukham.
Yathapakrishnam Shaivalam Ksanamatram na tishtati Avrunoti tatha maya Pragyam vapi parangmukham. Okay, so Shaivalam. The word Shaivalam basically means a thin layer of moss. M-O-S-S. Okay. Now this moss generally, you can find it in some pond or a lake where the water has been stagnant for a very long time, and so this moss grows on the surface of the water. And so in those days, during Shankaracharya's times, there were, people did not carry mirrors along with them. So if somebody wants to look at their face, they needed a clear reflecting surface. And apparently it was a practice in those days to check the face or look at the face in a reflected water. Okay, so the surface of the water acts as a mirror. Okay, but if there is moss on the water surface, then the face is not seen, because the moss is not a reflecting surface. It covers the water, so you have to use your hand to remove the moss slightly, expose the water, and then look at your face. So you have to imagine that context, that you don't have a mirror, you want to look at your face, but then there is a pond nearby. That pond of water is covered by moss, so you move the moss by hand and then look at the face. That's the context. Now the moment you remove the hand from the moss, the moss will again close that gap. Let's say you created a gap of 30 to 12 or 15 inches with your finger. The moment you lift your finger, that moss will quickly go back and close that surface. It will again become a non-reflecting surface. So that is the example given here. Yatha apakrishtam shaivalam ksanamatram na tishtati. This layer of moss, once you release it, it reflects, it springs back. It's so quick to go back. Ksanamatram na tishtati. It doesn't remain in that position for even a second. It quickly closes the water. Exactly like that. Avrunoti tatha maya. Avrunoti means to cover. To cover means to distract. Maya pragyam vapi parangmukham. Pragyam, the word pragyam here refers to the jnani. What we saw in the previous shlokas, vidwan. That vidwan and pragya are the same. So the parangmukham means to be extroverted, to be distracted, to be flustered. So if a jnani is extroverted or disturbed, then Maya very quickly covers his intellect and robs him momentarily of his teaching, of his knowledge, of his jnanam. So he can quickly forget that he is Brahman, exactly like how Narada forgot that he is Narada. The jnani can forget that he is actually Brahma Swarupam and slip down to an ahankara level. Okay, avrunoti tatha maya. So this word avrunoti, again we see in Bhagavad Gita, the 3rd chapter. In the 3rd chapter, you have 38 and 39. This idea is given. There, in the Bhagavad Gita, the covering is used in the sense of ignorance covering. So I'll read the shloka 37. No, not 37. 38 and 39. Dhumena vriyate vanhi yatha darsho malena cha yatholbena vrito garbha Tatha tenedam avritam. Avritam jnanametena jnanino nityavairina kamarupena kaunteya dushpurena nalena cha. So there the word avritam in Bhagavad Gita is the kamam, the desire. Desire covers the mind or intellect. And there Krishna says there are three levels of ignorance covering. One is a weak ignorance, the other is a mild or medium ignorance. The third one is a very strong ignorance. So he gives three examples. He gives a smoke covering the fire as the light ignorance. Then dust covering the mirror as a medium ignorance. And the child covered by the embryo of the mother, womb of the mother, as the strongest covering. Anyway, so I'm not here to explain Bhagavad Gita, but basically the idea of avritam or covering is used constantly across all the texts. So here Acharya says Maya avrunoti. Maya you can even take as ignorance, because ultimately Maya is also called Mula Avidya. Mula Vidya is another word we use for Maya. So it is the primordial ignorance, Mula Avidya. Okay, so Maya is capable of covering the intellect of even the wisest of wise persons, Pragyam Vapi Parangmukham. Once the genius or the Vidwan becomes a little extroverted, he can be easily deluded. That is 324. So all these are basically words of caution as to why we should be always guarding against negligence and carelessness. Okay. Questions, doubts, comments?
One small doubt, sir. When you finished, you said Maya is the Mula Vidya, and it actually works in a higher degree to an extrovert person. Am I right, sir?
Extroverted.
Extrovert, right? Fine, sir.
Extroverted. Extroverted as opposed to introverted. When you say introverted,
right.
in the Vedantic sense, being introverted is good, because when you are introverted, you are focused on your thoughts. You are carefully managing the thoughts and not allowing the thoughts to be clouded by emotion. Okay.
Right.
So this word parangmukham means the one who is not introverted, and that is what is actually defined as carelessness, vismriti or pramada and all that.
So it's better to be an introvert where you take time to react, or can I put it like that, sir, than to react to anything pretty quickly and to be an extrovert.
I mean, from a behavioral psychology point of view, it is always good to respond and not to react. Okay, so the word response and react are very often used. Even in Vedantic context, we say that when you react, the response actually is some kind of an automated response without thinking through the consequences. Whereas when the response comes as a response, it means you have thought through everything. You have a plan B, plan C, plan D, and then you are very deliberate in executing that plan. It's a little like Operation Sindoor. Okay, so we didn't respond immediately. We took 2 weeks. It's like that.
Right.
I think somebody raised the hand.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. Vasudevanji, can we also here say that extrovert and introvert are not the accurate word in English for that?
Yeah, I mean,
because
no Sanskrit word is accurately translated in English in that
correct.
For that matter. So we use these terms more like, for want of better term, we use these
correct.
words as substitutes.
Yeah.
Okay. So what you can say is a focused person and an unfocused person. Because parangmukham literally means outward looking. The word parangmukham, I use the word extrovert in the context of the word parangmukham, the last word of the second line. Okay.
Yeah.
Parangmukham literally means outward looking. Okay. And
is it that we are looking outside for validation or external stimuli rather than
it's not like that. See, it's not like that. See, in the Kathopanishad also, there is a mantra that says, Paranchikhani vyatrinat swayambhuhu tasmat parang pashyati nantaratman. So there the Upanishad says we have these 5 sense organs, and these 5 sense organs are the channel through which we perceive the world, and by design these sense organs are supposed to be looking outward. Okay, by design it is designed like that. Okay, so it is not some kind of a defect that we are looking here and there, or we are listening to sounds. The ears are meant to receive sound from outside. The eyes are meant to receive visual signals from outside. You cannot look inside your body with your eyes. Okay, so the sense organs have been designed for deploying in the outer world. So that makes it all the more difficult for the mind to desist from getting distracted by the world and focusing inside. So that is the context of the Upanishad mantra. So when you say parangmukham here, what it means is you are kind of flowing with your sense organs. In Tamil we have a movie song. It's a very philosophical movie song. I'll just give the words. Kan pona pokile kal pogalama, kal pona pokile manam pogalama. There is a song. It's a very old song, 30-40 years old. So what that song says is, can you just keep following your eyes and go wherever your eyes take you, or can you keep walking wherever you want to go just because your legs are taking you? So the point there is you have to take control of your eyes and your legs and all your sense organs, and you tell your sense organs what should be done and not the other way around. So that is parangmukham, means you let yourself be controlled by your sense organs. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sir, so if I have to hear, look, or talk in accordance with how my inside says, am I right? Can we go like that? so that these distractions, these sense organs which are actually designed to look outside will also follow the order.
Yeah. See, it's a little, I'll give you a software example. In software, especially when you are dealing with network and internet and all that, you have traffic coming into the network from all over the place. Especially if you're running a web server, you will have thousands of hits, coming to your server every second or every minute. But then you have something called a firewall, which monitors what kind of traffic comes in, and it wards off certain unwanted calls. It'll identify some IP address or some website which is supposed to be malicious, and it will cut off all those incoming traffic. So your mind has to have some kind of a firewall. That's the whole idea. Right. So your sense organs will keep giving you a lot of signals from the outside world. Will you allow all those signals to occupy your CPU, or will you be able to employ some filter and say that I will not allow these signals to be processed by my mind? If you employ an effective firewall and make sure that you don't get pulled by any and every signal that comes from the world, then you are able to save the energy of the mind and focus on the Vedantic teaching. See, ultimately the mind cannot remain idle. I think I mentioned this one of the earlier classes also. The mind cannot remain idle. It can remain idle for a short while, but it can't remain idle forever. It can't remain idle for a very long time. So it has to have some kind of a processing that keeps it busy. If you don't give that mind a good feed to process, good feed in the form of Vedantic teachings or spiritual content, or even prayer for that matter, if you don't give it good content, it will pull bad content from the world. So to keep the mind without straying away, you have to pull it back and keep giving it good content. That is the whole exercise. Now, you can describe it in this language or that language or some other language. The language doesn't matter. Ultimately, what matters is how is your mind, what is your mind processing? Is it processing good stuff or not good stuff?
Right. Discipline. Right. Got you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. So, can we move on? 325. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Lakshyachyutam chet.
Lakshyachyutam chet.
Lakshyachyutam chet.
Yadi chittameshat.
Yadi chittameshat.
Bahirmukham san.
Bahirmukham san.
Nipatet.
Nipatet.
Tatastataha.
Tatastataha.
Pramadataha.
Pramadataha.
Prachyuta keli kandukaha.
Prachyuta keli kandukaha.
Sopana panktau.
Sopana panktau.
Patito yatha tatha.
Patito
yatha tatha.
Okay. Lakshyachyutam ched yadi chittamishad bahirmukham san nipatet tatastataha pramadataha prachyuta keli kandukaha sopana panktau patito yatha tatha. So this shloka is the example of the ball. I mentioned a few minutes back in one of the earlier shlokas that there is going to be a shloka about the ball slipping from the hand. So that is this shloka. Kanduka. Keli kandukaha is a ball. Okay. Lakshyachyutam chet yadi chittam ishat. So chutam means fall. Lakshyachyutam means fall from the objective or slipping from the objective. That is Lakshyachyutam, which is nothing but Vismriti or Pramada that we are talking about in all these sections. Yeah. So Lakshyachyutam is another word for Pramada. In the previous shloka, we also saw Vismriti. So all these are synonyms. So Ishat chet. Ishat means even a little bit. Okay. Yadi chet, if. Yadi chet is if it happens. Chittam, if the mind. Chittam is mind. So if the mind slips from the objective even for a small, brief fraction of a second, what happens? Okay. Bahirmukham san. And if it turns out to be externally focused or distracted, no, that is Parangmukham of the previous shloka. Bahirmukham and Parangmukham are the same. Okay, so if the mind slips from its objective, what is objective? The objective is to keep hammering into your mind that I am Brahman, I am Brahman, I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am not the intellect. That repeated hammering is Lakshyam. That is to become Brahmanishta. And if you are slipping from that objective even for a fraction of a second, Ishat, Nipatet tatastataha. Nipatet means it will result in a fall. A fall means you basically descend. You know, we saw that in 322 there were some sequence of steps mentioned, right? Mohaha, then Ahandi, then Bandha, Vyatha. So you will slip in that path. You will fall into the valley. Sorry?
Downfall.
Yeah, downfall. You will fall into the valley. So that is Nipatet tatastataha. So you will fall. And the example given, imagine there is a person who's carrying a ball and walking on a flight of steps. Maybe he's going from ground floor to first floor, and he's carrying the ball in his hand. And when he is almost at the top of the stairs, the ball slips from his hand and then falls. When that happens, the ball will not stop at the step where he is standing, but it will go from one step to another, and it will keep on falling until it hits the floor in the next ground below. Let's say this person is somewhere near the first floor and the ball slips. It will eventually stop only when it hits the ground floor. Okay, so that is the example. Sopana panktaha means sopana pankti is the flight of staircase. Sopana pankti means the staircase. Patitaha means fallen. Keli kandukaha means a ball which is used in play. Pramadataha prachyuta keli kandukaha. So pramadataha means the person who was holding the ball was little careless for a small moment, and in that moment of carelessness the ball fell. Prachyuta means fallen. Okay, so once the ball slips from the hand, it will keep falling one step after the other, and it will stop only at the ground floor. Exactly like that, if the jnani loses his focus and gives way to negligence or carelessness, it can lead to a deep fall that he will have to start the journey all over again, like our Jadabharata. So the Jadabharata example has to be, very consciously remembered. How a person can lose focus even at an advanced stage, and then what happened to Jadabharata? It took him 2 more janmas before he got liberated. In one janma he was born as a deer, and in the next janma he was born in a Brahmin family, but there also he had a very tough life, and finally he had to carry a king's palanquin and all that. If you go through Bhagavatam, you will see that story, that the Jadabharata story runs to some 3 chapters in Bhagavatam. Okay, so ideally he should have been liberated before he met the deer, but because of the deer, his moksham got postponed by 2 janmas. So that is the fall. Similarly, the jnani can suffer a great fall, and then it will take a long time for him to recover. That is the idea that's going to be even more elaborated in the next shlokas. But this is 325. I think the meaning was quite clear. Do we need any further explanation?
No.
325?
No, sir, this was clear.
No.
Right. So let's go to 326. Vishayeshu
Vishayeshu
Avishat
Avishat
Chetaha
Tetaha
Sankalpayati Tadgunan.
Sankalpayati Tadgunan.
Samyak Sankalpanat Kamaha. Wait.
Samyak
Sankalpanat. You will stop at that. Samyak Sankalpanat
Samyak Sankalpanat
Kamaha
Kamaha
Kamat Pumsaha Pravartanam.
Kamat Pumsaha Pravartanam.
Vishayeshvavishatchetah Sankalpayati Tadgunan Samyak Sankalpanat Kamaha Kamat Pumsaha Pravartanam. So this is again the parallel to the same Bhagavad Gita shloka, Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaha. That Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaha idea is being repeated because Acharya feels that it's a very important point that we should never miss. Whenever the focus shifts from Atma Swarupam to Anatma, from Atma focus to Anatma focus, what normally triggers that fall is a desire or a kama. Kama is a desire. Yeah. Very often you are distracted by the desire to enjoy this or enjoy that. So the Vishayeshu Vishayeshu Avishat. The word Avishat here means to harbor some kind of fun obsession. I don't know if the other languages have this expression. In Tamil, there is a word called Avesham. Tamil, we use the word Avesham. The word Avesham means you are so wild as though you are possessed by some other spirit. The word Avesham means something has entered your body and it has taken control over you. That is Avesham. So the person is not any longer under his own control, he is controlled by some remote control somewhere. That Avesham. So here, Vishayeshu Avishat means if your mind has been taken over by the Anatma of the world, the sense objects of the world. The word Vishaya here is the sense object. So if your mind is taken over by the sense objects, Sankalpayati tad gunan, then what happens? That the mind keeps on repeating the good qualities that is imagined or really perceived by the mind. Let's say, we can take a very common modern example. You have all these advertisements. Today everybody, whether you are watching TV or watching, looking at some YouTube video or whatever, advertisements keep coming. And sometimes you will see the same advertisement coming every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes. And what do these advertisements do? They offer you some kind of an enjoyment, some kind of a pleasure very often. And by repeatedly getting exposed to these advertisements, our mind starts believing the content of the advertisement, and we start repeating all the good qualities that the advertisement talks about. It could be just a perfume, it could be some kind of a energy drink, it could be some kind of a car or some kind of a new telephone, whatever. The advertisement makes you focus only on the positive and good things of that product that they are selling. Exactly like that, when the Vishaya takes over your mind, the mind will keep on convincing itself about the positive aspects of that Vishaya. So, Sankalpayati tad gunan. The gunam here refers to the positive attributes. And Sankalpayati means to keep on repeating to oneself. And so what happens is that what may be a weak desire in the beginning will slowly get strengthened. Initially, you may say, yeah, it is nice. And then after some time, you might say, yeah, maybe I should have it. That maybe I should have it will then become, I think I must have it. And then that I think I must have it will eventually become, without that I cannot live. So your desire becomes so strong that you believe that you have to have that item, whatever it is, if you have to live. So that is the level of self-hypnotization that the Vishaya Avesha can cause in a person's mind. So one has to be very, very careful as to what thoughts we harbor. Okay, that is the process which is indicated in the first line. Vishayeshu avishat chetaha sankalpayati tadgunan. So the mind self-hypnotizes itself about the positive aspects of the Vishaya or the sense object. Then samyak sankalpanat kamaha. So by repeatedly meditating on the good qualities, so-called good qualities, the desire strengthens. kamaha, it becomes a desire eventually. Initially, it was just a trigger. Now it has become a big desire, very strong desire. I can't live without it. Yeah. Kamat pumsaha pravartanam. So, kamat pumsah pravartanam is actually, the word pravartanam means to eventually live for that. You live only for fulfilling that desire. That is one meaning. You can also say that pravartanam means it leads to further janmas. Because once you have given way to all the desires, it is not easy to get rid of the desires quickly. And so what happens? Sometimes your desire may not be fulfilled in this janma, and because you had the desire, you will have to take a few more janmas to fulfill that desire. So pravartanam can also mean punarjanma here. So once you get into the trap of desire, you get into punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam cycle. So the whole Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam process was to get rid of the Janma, but somewhere in the process you lost track and you got back into Janma like Jadabharata. Okay, today Jadabharata is coming again and again. Okay, so that is the idea given in this 326th shloka. Okay, so this is a very strong word of caution. Okay, we have reached our time limit. So if there are any questions, we can spend some time, or else we can wind up.
No questions, Vasudevanji.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. That was a good alert. Today's session was a good alert.
Thank you so much. We'll
Thank
all
you.
thank Adi Shankara for that.
Yes, sir. Thank
Right. Okay, then we'll close with the shlokas. Yeah. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate Sarvesham Swastirбhavatu Sarvesham Shantirbhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarvepi Sukhinas Santu Sarve Santu Niramayah Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. One quick announcement. Next week's session will happen on the free conference call Bridge that we use for Parayanam, because the moderator is not available next week. So we'll have a switch or shift of the venue. Instead of
Okay.
Google Meet, we will meet on free conference call. Okay.
Okay.
you. Okay,
Thank
sir.
you. Namaste. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.